Greetings. Today we're going to be looking at the term exposition. Let's start with the definition. What is exposition? The exposition of a story is the first paragraph or paragraphs in which the characters, setting, the time and place, and the basic information is introduced. A lot of movies show the exposition by panning over the city or countryside and showing the main character doing something such as walking, working, or waking up. These scenes allow the readers or viewers to understand where the story is taking place and who is in it. So, let's look at what does exposition look like in modern media. While the original terminology for exposition typically applies to literature and movies, exposition plays a vital role in establishing the basis for a television series. The first episode of a TV series is called the pilot episode. This episode will not only contain an exposition, but the entire episode itself could be considered an exposition for the entire series itself. To illustrate an exposition, we're going to look at a clip from the pilot episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine and break down how producers Dan Goor and Michael Schur, along with the writers, utilize exposition to help establish each character's personality traits and their roles within the storyline. This brief clip takes place just a few minutes into the first episode and is used to help establish the tone, setting, and character base. After the clip, we will analyze each character as well as the overall setting to see what this exposition reveals about the show and how the characters interact with their environment.
Sorry, dude, but this new guy is going to be another washed-up pencil pusher who's only concerned with following every rule in the patrol guide. Meet Morp Z. Robot Captain, engage!
Is that what you think?
Hey! New captain alert! You must be the new CEO. I'm Detective Jake Peralta. Great to meet you.
No, don't let me interrupt. You were describing what kind of person I'm going to be. I'd like you to finish.
It's not necessary. Or I could recap very quickly, sure. Let's see. I think I said some joke about being a washed-up pencil pusher.
Now do the robot voice. The robot voice you were doing when you implied I'm a rule-following robot. I want to hear it again.
Meet more sharp robot.
That's a terrible robot voice.
Yep.
The next time I see you, I'd like you to be wearing a necktie.
Oh, actually, the last captain didn't care if we wore ties.
Well, your new captain does. And more importantly, he cares that you follow his direct orders. Everyone, I'm your new commanding officer, Captain Ray Holt.
Speech!
That was my speech.
Short and sweet.
Sergeant Jeffords, a word.
Yes, sir.
I love that guy.
Same.
He's so suave. Does anyone get a little bit of a gay vibe? No? Okay.
Sergeant, you were in the 1-8 with me, though you were significantly...
Fatter, sir. They called me Cherry Titties because I had large...
Titties, yes, I remember. I never liked that nickname, though, to be fair, it was accurate. What's this I hear about you being on administrative leave?
A year ago, my wife and I had twin baby girls, Cagney and Lacey.
They have adorable chubby cheeks.
Ever since, I kind of got scared of getting hurt, lost my edge. There was an incident in a department store.
Hey, man, you okay? You look a little chubby.
I'm fine, I'm fine.
I think he's dead.
And I'm still not right.
Tell me about your detective squad.
Well, Scully, Hitchcock, and Daniels, they're pretty much worthless, but they make good coffee.
Copy that.
Now the good ones. Rosa Diaz, tough, smart, hard to read, and really scary.
Tell me who has me for Secret Santa.
No, that takes all the fun out of it. It's Scully. He got you a scarf. I'll make him return it.
Yes, you will.
Charles Boyle. He's a grinder. Not the most brilliant detective, but he works harder than anyone else. He's not physically gifted.
Oh man, my muffin. Ah! Oh, my head! My muffin in my head, and I stepped on my muffin on my head and my muffin.
Amy Santiago. She's got 7 brothers, so she's always trying to prove she's tough.
Careful, that stuff's pretty hot.
Oh, is it?
She and Peralta have some big bet over who gets more arrests this year. Ever since the bet, their numbers have gone way up.
Tell me about Peralta.
Jacob Peralta is my best detective. He likes putting away bad guys, and he loves solving puzzles. The only puzzle he hasn't solved is how to grow up.
That was very well put.
I've talked a lot about Jake in my departmentally mandated therapy sessions.
Look, you know my history. You know how important this is to me. This precinct is doing fine, but I want to make it the best one in Brooklyn. And I need your help.
Absolutely, sir. Where do we start?
What is happening?
We start with him.
All right, so let's break this down. So starting with the exposition, it's important to note that this wasn't in here, but before we go forward, you need to understand that the show does take place in Brooklyn, New York, and it revolves around a group of detectives at the 99th Precinct, hence Brooklyn Nine-Nine. The script focuses more on comedy than anything else, and this particular exposition really focuses on character relationships that are being revealed. The first character we're going to look at is Captain Raymond Holt, who's played by Andre Braugher. He's very matter-of-fact, meaning he states things very directly and as the facts present themselves. He's very professional, as we can see from the video. He states very clearly that he wants to make this precinct the best one in New York, and he's a very no-nonsense kind of guy. We also know that he happens to be the police captain, which means he's going to be the supervisor in this case, and the way in which the supervisor is presented can really set the tone for how this comedic setup is going to happen, especially since we kind of already saw that Detective Peralta, who we'll talk about later, is a very comedic character. The second character we're going to look at is Sergeant Terry Jeffords, played by Terry Crews. So right off the bat, we understand that as a sergeant, he's a leader, and he demonstrates that in the video. We know that he is a father of two. We know that he is very professional as well compared to some of his other colleagues. And more so, we understand that he has to fight over Brooklyn University. He used to be overweight. He has fears of going back to the field, which already establishes this character trait that we're going to likely see later on as the series progresses. Up next, we have detectives Hitchcock and Scully. So Hitchcock is played by Dirk Blocker, and Scully is played by Joel McKinnon Miller. Now, if you look closely at this, you're going to see in the video that Hitchcock, Scully, and a third member are mentioned. However, this third member will never be referenced throughout the rest of the series. So as the show goes on, it becomes very clear that Hitchcock and Scully are really just supporting cast members. And to reinforce that even further, all we know about them thus far is they make good coffee. They're not really good detectives. And the only times that we have seen either of them on screen, they've been used for the purpose of comedic relief. So there's a strong chance that as it goes on, they're going to be there to help provide a couple of laughs, but their role in the story is not going to be as important as anyone else, but they're there to help make the other characters more interesting and enrich the story as a whole. The next character that we're introduced to is Detective Rosa Diaz, who's played by Stephanie Beatriz. We know, based on Sergeant Jeffords' remarks, that she's tough, smart, hard to read, and really scary. So what this really tells us is that her position in relationship with the others is going to be that she's more of the cliche hardened character that we're looking for. But more than that, we should expect to see some surprises. We should expect that she's not going to change, that she's going to be stuck in her ways. So she provides a very interesting kind of rock dynamic that's not as flexible because of how little you know about her. And as the show goes on, it actually will play on this idea that no one really knows much about her, that she keeps to herself, that she's more of a lone wolf in that regard. Now we have Detective Charles Boyle, who's played by Jolo Truglio. He's, as the sergeant presents him, a grinder, meaning he's really persistent. He works harder than others to be good at his job. He's not physically gifted, and from the video we can tell he's a bit of a goof. So this is going to be a more dominant comedic presence, and as we can tell, it's less of the supporting kind of comedic relief we got from Detectives Hitchcock and Scully, and this is more brought to the forefront. And he might be a mix of slapstick humor or situational humor, but Charles will really help set up a lot of the situations as the story advances because of how versatile his character was designed to be. Sergeant Jeffords then introduces Detective Amy Santiago, who's played by Melissa Fumero. What we know about Detective Santiago is that she's a big go-getter, and she's always looking to prove herself. She's very professional in nature, choosing always to wear a suit and to wear the tie and to wear the dress code. And we know that she is competitive. And in the clips that we do see of her, we understand that it's kind of a bit of her hubris, which means that her own desire to prove herself may actually end up kind of shooting her in the foot, so to speak, and causing troubles for her down the line, setting her up for a lot of really comedic situations that could occur to her, basically through her own pride getting in the way. Lastly, Sergeant Jeffords introduces Detective Jacob Peralta, who's played by Andy Samberg. Now, given the fact that the majority of the story is going to focus on Detective Peralta, we would consider him more of the protagonist. He has some traits that we would expect. He's the top detective, as Sergeant Jeffords says. He's very immature despite being the top detective. He's very competitive by nature, given the competition that him and Amy Santiago currently have. And he's prone to cause problems, as Sergeant Jeffords indicates by the departmentally mandated therapy sessions. This is really important to note because it kind of shows that even though Peralta is the protagonist of the show, he also causes the most problems for the cast, which is a great setup for a comedic situation, especially when the character who you're always rooting for is constantly stumbling along the way. Now we need to look at the question, how do these characters interact with their environment? And this is the whole purpose of an exposition. Based on the exposition, it would seem that the protagonist is Detective Jacob Peralta, as he is the character that gets the most attention during the exposition. All the other characters would be considered deuteragonous, or the second most important character. The writers set up the character environment this way because it allows for the most versatility regarding storytelling. In particular, it allows for a central storyline to revolve around Detective Peralta, while allowing additional story arcs for character development to take place. This exposition also serves as a unique dual purpose regarding character interactions. The first purpose is to engage the audience and let us feel like we are involved in the story. Just as Captain Holt must get to know his squad, we the audience get to learn about the squad alongside Captain Holt. This gives the viewers a sense of immersion into the show. Even more so, this means that the audience, like the rest of the characters on the show, except for Sergeant Jeffords, are unaware of Captain Holt's past or personality. This is, of course, a 2-for-1 effect that helps the audience get to know the characters, while also inviting the audience to follow along as the captain and his new detective squad get to know one another. Now, the second purpose is to help establish character traits for situational humor. Brooklyn Nine-Nine focuses heavily on the use of comedic dialogue with situational humor to provoke laughs from the audience. A great example is how Detective Peralta has an established character trait of being childish, which is used to set up the wordplay Sergeant Jeffords uses to describe Detective Peralta by saying, the only case he hasn't solved is how to grow up. As the characters continue to grow throughout the show, the writers will be able to pull from past character experiences to create situational humor or comedic dialogue as the show progresses. Let's end on a brief recap and let's make sure we can answer all of these questions. First, what is an exposition? Can we answer that? Do we know what an exposition is? 2, how does an exposition work? Can you explain to me what it does and how that can be achieved, which will tie into the third question. Can you provide specific examples that might be used in an exposition? And as a bonus question, can you think of a book or a show that does not use an exposition?